Hello everyone and welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show. I am your host Mark Philpott, and on the show I get to speak to amazing people all over the world about their incredible travel experiences. Hello everyone and welcome back to the regular listeners of the show, and thank you very much for your loyalty. It's much appreciated, as is people that are turning on for the first time and listening to me today. Thank you very much. It's great to have you on board, and don't forget you can check out all the previous episodes of the Global Travel Channel at www.globaltravelchannel.com. It's easy as that. We also have a YouTube channel now with all the podcast shows on. So switch on over to YouTube, hit the subscribe button, and you will be notified every time that I place a new show up there. Now, I am very fortunate because I can sit here on my sailboat and I can talk to people all over the world about their incredible traveling experiences. And today is no different. My guest today left the Philippines, her native country, at the age of 8, went to the United States of America as an immigrant, and started a new life. She's now flying high with lots of amazing stuff that she's doing. She's a remote entrepreneur and the host of the Offbeat Life, which is a podcast where she interviews individuals who are location independent and are remote workers. She's also an expert at turning hobbies into profitable businesses and monetizing podcasts. Yes, she's a wonderful woman. And I would like to now welcome my guest of the day to the Global Travel Channel podcast show, and her name is Debbie Arcangeles. Debbie, welcome to the Global Travel Channel podcast show.
Well, thank you so much for having me with you, Mark.
You're welcome. And you know what? I said good morning, but it's not morning where you are. Can you tell my listeners where you are in the world today?
I'm actually in Florida, and it's the afternoon, late afternoon here.
It is, and we're a day ahead of you down here in Australia, so I can tell you what's going to happen in your future if you'd like.
But I am a lot, 1 year younger than you, so that's good for me.
There you are. Yeah, there's a bonus attached to that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look, I'm really excited to have you on the show and to be chatting with you today, because I think between the two of us we have a lot to chat about, and there's a lot of exciting stuff going on in your life. Now, you're not originally from Florida, so do you want to tell everybody who's listening where you are originally from?
Absolutely. So again, as Mark said, my name is Debbie. I was born in the Philippines, but pretty much grew up in New York City. So I'm island born, but city raised girl. And I pretty much just, learned my way into everything that I could in New York City. I've tried so many different things, and it's been a really crazy and awesome ride.
Were you from Manila originally in the Philippines?
No, I'm from a very small town called Rojas City. It's a tiny, tiny little town in an island in the Philippines.
Okay, the reason I asked you that, and I guess when everybody asks you, when you say you're from the Philippines, I'm sure they say, "Are you from Manila?" Like that's the only place people know. But the reason I asked you was going from the Philippines to New York City must have been a major change in your life.
Absolutely. One of the things that I always tell people was when I first came here, the first memory I've ever had was tasting pizza and how gross it was.
And now you love it, right?
Oh my goodness, I love pizza, especially as a New Yorker. We have it all the time.
Yeah, and I tell you what, there's nothing like New York pizza, right? It's just the best, and people don't understand it who haven't been there.
We're very proud of our pizza and our bagels, that's for sure.
So, do you call yourself a New Yorker these days, do you?
I do. I've been living there for, oh my goodness, almost 30 years. So it's been a while. I would say I am a New Yorker at this point.
I love the city so much. I've lost count how many times I've been there, but what's your favorite couple of things about New York?
Really, honestly, it's the people and the food that I really love. I love New Yorkers because what you see is what you get. And the food, obviously, people come from all over the world to taste the food that we have. So whether it's expensive or inexpensive, everything is just so delicious.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, I'm a New Zealander, and I would say that New Yorkers and New Zealanders have got a lot in common because New Zealanders are also known for their directness and their sometimes abrupt honesty. And I think that's what you find in New York. But it's great, isn't it? You know where you stand straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really what I love about it. There's no fakeness to it. I mean, sometimes people think that New Yorkers are off putting, but it's just who we are. You love us or you hate us.
Ex- Exactly right. So all the folks listening today, you're going to get it as we tell it because you've got a New Yorker and a Kiwi on the line here, and yeah, we're going to give it to you straight between the eyes, so to speak. So let's get into it. Debbie, one of the things that I do on my show is I actually would like my guests to dedicate the show to someone special in their life. So who would you like to dedicate the show to today?
I would really just love to dedicate this one to all of my family and friends who are health workers. I know how hard it is right now. I think 60% of my family are health workers, so I want to dedicate this to them for all the hard work they've been doing lately and all the time, actually.
Beautiful. Well, I tell you what, when they finish their shifts and they go home and relax, they can put in their earphones and listen to the podcast, and that's a wonderful dedication. So thank you for reaching out to them because they are doing such a wonderful job at the moment, keeping us safe and keeping us well. Now, you're a fellow podcaster, and I was so excited when you said, yes, I'll come on the show and have a chat to you because we can learn so much from each other, but also there's a lot of people that listen to my show who have reached out over the recent months and said, hey, I want to start a podcast and, what should I do? And I kind of go, ooh, wow, hang on a minute. Am I the right person to be asking that? So it's great to have someone with your experience. You've got a podcast show called The Offbeat Life, which I absolutely love the name of that. How did you come up with the name of that?
It's interesting because I actually, before I even started the podcast, I had a social media following called the Offbeat Trucker because I love to hike. And at that time, people kept asking me to have my own blog, but I knew I really didn't want to tell people where to go and what to see. I think there's enough amazing travel bloggers out there. And fortunately, I got introduced to podcasting by my fiance at the time because he's a pretty much an avid podcast listener. And
Mm.
when I really listened to a lot of these podcasts and these shows, I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And so I was thinking about a name. I'm like, well, the Offbeat Life sounds like it would be a good name because I'm the Offbeat Trucker. So let's do this.
Beautiful. And you started your podcast back in August 2017, if I'm right.
Yeah. So the actually 2017 September 4th. So
September 4th. Okay.
yeah, we're coming to our 3 years this year.
Well, congratulations. And as a fellow podcaster, I know how hard it is and I know how much work you put in. So to be coming up to 3 years, you've done an enormously well job. Good. Congratulations for that.
Thank you so much. It's definitely been a roller coaster, but it's been very, very rewarding for sure.
I want to say about one point, I listened to your episode 0 and I didn't do an episode 0. I should have done an episode 0. I started off at 1. See, we do things differently, us podcasters. Yeah? I listened to your episode 0 and you said something really pertinent and it kind of stuck with me, and I wanted to really talk to you about it today because you said during that episode that everyone is searching for a purpose, and I really love that. And can you explain a little bit more what you meant by that?
When I started the podcast, I didn't even know that this was going to be my full-time gig. It was pretty crazy how this all turned out. But at that time, I was really searching for a purpose for myself. Before I even started the podcast, I really was not happy with where I was because I knew there was something else that I needed to do. And what led me to really start this podcast was really the need to find what I wanted to do with my life, what my purpose was. And every single person that I've spoken to on my podcast or on the road, wherever I am, is searching for something. And I noticed too that when you don't have that yet, you're always lost, right? And there's always something that's missing in your life that you're really trying to find. And talking to everyone that I have spoken to, have interviewed, a lot of them have really found that purpose. And getting into that journey is so interesting because everyone's story is so different, and just the journey alone is like a storybook for a lot of us, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, with the great reflection of hindsight, looking back now and kind of being honest to yourself, what was it that you were missing in terms of your purpose now that you've got nearly 3 years under your belt and you're looking back at yourself in 2017? What do you think it was that you were searching for?
It was just really something that I knew that I wanted to do, something creative, something that I could not only help myself but help other people, but also just do something that I woke up every morning loving. And it was funny because I was at a job at that time that most people would die for, right? I worked at a job that, the company that I was working at were really amazing. They treated me so well. I made my own hours. I made a lot of money. I could take off whenever I wanted. And that's on paper, that's really what most people want, right? And I didn't really work that much either. I think full time for me was like 20 hours a week. So it was like nothing. And it was a very, very hard time for me because I knew that if I had transitioned, if I left this, it would be like leaving something that was secure. And taking that leap was definitely something that I needed to do, even though it was such a scary thing to do. That's how I knew that it was really what my purpose was, because I was willing to take that risk.
Yeah, that's brilliant because, I'm sure you say it 100 times on your show as well that life starts outside the comfort zone, right? And when you challenge yourself to go beyond what you think you're possible of or capable of doing, then that's where the magic usually happens. And it sounds like that's exactly the path that you took.
Yeah, it had to be. I had no choice. I was just at a point in my life where I either had to do it or just be miserable every single day. And I think for me, the risk was so much more if I had stayed at the life that I was currently living.
So a lot of people right now around the world are probably stuck in that under that dark cloud with a lot of what's going on. So what advice would you give to them to help them, I guess, take those first steps towards their greatness? What would you say to them right now?
I would say don't be afraid to try anything that gives you life and interest. One of the things that I feel like I did really well, especially in my 20s, was just making sure I tried every single thing that I was really interested in. And that's
Mm.
how you figure out what you're supposed to be doing. And it's going to be checking off boxes and saying no's to a lot of things before you find that yes. And when you feel like you finally find it, don't overwhelm yourself. Even if you're just doing one thing every single day to get to that goal, try that. Because if you have a day job right now, if you have a family to support, if you have so many different things that you're worrying about, don't just take the leap. A lot of people say that just leave your 9 to 5 and go for it. Well, that's kind of BS because we all have bills to pay.
Mm.
So make sure that you're also prepared to do it and you're doing it smartly, and but you're still trying to do what you love to do, because then you won't be going crazy otherwise.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. And I guess in summarizing that, it's about keeping the balance, right? Just making sure that you've considered everything in that decision making process. Why was it podcasting for you? Why wasn't it photography or writing or art or something else?
I was actually a photographer for quite some time, so that's why I knew it wasn't really what I needed to do. I was a photojournalist for a few years, and podcasting was really the platform that I wanted to go into because when I was a photojournalist, one of the things that I absolutely loved the most, maybe even more than photographing, was when I was talking to the people I was photographing. So I would ask them a lot of questions, make them really comfortable in front of the camera, and that's how you would get them to be more open. And it really translates when you take photographs when people are uncomfortable, when they're comfortable. So that's really why I loved podcasting, because you can get so many amazing information and you could really connect in a different way.
That's exactly right. So what made you choose the subject matter for your podcast that you did?
Well, I knew that I wanted to be a remote entrepreneur. And when I was traveling as a photojournalist, even as a tourist, I would meet so many different digital nomads, remote workers, and I wanted to learn from them because I wanted travel to be more sustainable. And honestly, it's not just about travel for me, it's about freedom. And I love having the freedom to work wherever, to do whatever I wanted. So that's why really interviewing remote entrepreneurs, remote workers was something that I was interested in.
Yeah, interesting you talk about that freedom aspect, because I think people who haven't been in that space where, they might get in the car and do the daily commute to the office, and they come back and they feel trapped to a large extent. They haven't really tasted that sense of freedom. What do you think that sense of freedom allows you to do as a human being?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of getting that sense right now because they're forced into remote work. But the
Mm.
difference is that you can actually leave the house, you can travel. Um, but the thing about having remote work, remote business is that really you can work when you want. You can choose how you work, when you work, when you want to do it. So there's so many different types of freedom to it. And also, I just love the fact that we can have more time for wherever we want to place it. So take out all of the commuting that you're doing, and you are able to spend more time with your family. And
Mm.
you don't have to live in an expensive city if you don't want to. You don't have to live in New York City. You can live somewhere in South America or Asia. So it's a really different lifestyle once you are not confined in one location or one space anymore.
Mm. As you mentioned earlier, travel's been a big part of your life journey thus far. What essence of freedom does travel give to you particularly?
Freedom in travel. At first, when I started this, I knew I wanted to travel more, but it's interesting because now that it's part of my business, actually I want to stay grounded more because I've been traveling so much. But freedom with travel is really about freeing your mind. It's not just about seeing new things, it's also about what you're taking in, the cultures, the ideas that people are taking in. Because once you go out there in the world and you realize that there's something other than the tiny little town that you're in, it really changes everything about you. And you learn how to appreciate different people, different cultures, and even why we're so lucky to be living where we are. And it's pretty amazing and mind blowing what that can do to a person.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now, your podcast, the Offbeat Life podcast, you talk to people that are basically, transiting around the world, making a living from being on the road. Actually, I want to talk to you about that because on your beautiful website, you've got a photo of yourself sitting on a road. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
And next to that, you've got making money on the road,
Yeah.
right? Those are the words you've got.
Yep.
Well, after today, I want you to change those words and I want you to add "and on the sea or ocean" because there's people out there that are making money on the sea and the ocean as well as on the road.
Just like you.
So, I just thought that was a little bit of fun. But you talk to people who are out there creating these amazing lifestyles of traveling around the world, being part of different cultures, working in different countries, and making it sustainable. And I guess that's really the key. So you've been doing this for a while now. What are some of the changes that you've seen in the digital nomad landscape over the last number of years?
I think there's so much more interest and there's so many more people actually doing it. I think even a few years back, obviously being a digital nomad is not that new. And there's definitely been some OGs, some originals out there who has been doing this for a really long time. But I think because so many more people are talking about it, and now because of COVID, everybody's forced to do it. There's so much more people that are able to transition into this lifestyle so much more easier. There's been a lot of myths about it, how it's so hard to get in, but a lot of people are finding that it's really not. And you may even have, well, not may, you do have a lot of the skills that you need in order to get into this lifestyle, and it's not as hard as you think.
From the people that you've spoken to, and this is what I love finding out about my guests, because we go a little bit deeper than just talking about travel. We get into their soul a bit, and I'm really interested to find out the guests that you have on your show, is there a common theme of where they've come from before they get into that digital nomad lifestyle? Are they burnt out corporate people, or what are they?
It's either people who are burnt out from corporate or somebody
Mm.
who's always been offbeat, right? They were never the type of people that would go into the 9 to 5. So you either have one or the other, and it's really something that's pushing them because either it's who they are or it's something that they have to do because it's really speaking to them and they can't go back to the life that they were living.
And have you seen that it's been something that's been easily sustainable over the years? Like, are you still in touch with the people that you interviewed in the beginning of your show and seeing how they're going today?
Absolutely. There's so many of them that I'm very close friends now. You know, some of my dearest friends have been the people that I've actually interviewed on the show. And we met on the road. We met in either one of the cities that we live in, and we become really close. So this community seems like it's big, but it's not. It's very small, and people tend to keep each other close. And, you know, once you meet each other and you have that connection, it really stays for a very, very long time.
What have been some of their biggest challenges of making a living from working on the road?
For on the road, definitely it's about not getting distracted and having shiny object syndrome. It's not as easy as you think to work and traveling at the same time. That's why for me, it's all about location independence and not necessarily becoming a nomad. And it's hard to do that if you're constantly traveling every few weeks and you constantly have to figure out what kind of internet you have, where you're going to live. You make sure you have a setup, make sure you have a certain type of routine that you're setting for yourself. So it definitely does have its challenges.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've spoken to quite a few digital nomads on my show, and they all say to me, because they've been doing it for a number of years, and they say, we're really ready to settle down and get a base somewhere, and maybe spend more time digging deeper into some of these places that we actually travel to. Are you starting to see that as well?
Absolutely. So I've never really been a nomad. I mean, I would travel for work, but I always have had a base. And also, since my fiance is working in New York City, we can't really leave. So it's like that for me. I definitely need a base, and also I find that when I do travel for work, I mean, I've done it where I had to be away from home for at least 2 months, and I was constantly working. It just wasn't sustainable for me, and I was constantly trying to catch up. So, I mean, a lot of people have been able to do it, but I would say that there is a certain time frame that they do stop and stay at a place at a longer for a longer period of time because it's just gonna burn you out.
Do you know what the youngest and the oldest digital nomads you've spoken to are?
Oh my goodness. Most of the youngest are definitely in their early 20s, and I've spoken to other digital nomads that are in their 60s.
Right, wow. Okay. And the ones in their 60s have been doing it for a while, or they've just kind of picked it up?
It's surprising. One guest that I've spoken to, she actually just started traveling with her daughter, and I think she started becoming a digital nomad only a few years ago, maybe like 3 to 5 years ago. So it's not something that you can say only young people do it, or you have to have done this for a really long period of time to do this lifestyle. So anyone at any age can definitely do this.
What are some of the critical tools that someone needs to have on board to become a successful digital nomad?
You definitely need to make sure that you're organized, especially when you're on the road. So, having things that will allow you to communicate well with your team or even companies that you're working for. So, things like Asana, Trello, Evernote, and obviously, you need things like Zoom to do conference calling or Skype. Those are usually the main things that you need to organize in order to be organized and to communicate well with your company and your team.
I think after what we're going through, 90% of the world's population is going to know how to use Zoom.
Absolutely.
Even the musicians are getting on board.
Yeah, it's crazy how many people are working online and you wouldn't think that you can make money from it. I've even seen people do photo shoots through Zoom. So they can do
Wow.
it.
Wow, that's incredible. Doing a photo shoot through Zoom. Wow.
Yeah.
Bizarre. Okay. That might be bad news for models. They won't be leaving home anymore.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
Let's go back to your journey for a moment, because I'm really interested to know how your early years of travel impacted your view on the world. And you talked about your college years when photography was a passion of yours, and you were fortunate enough to go to many places around the world during that period of time. Can you tell us about some of those experiences?
Absolutely. So when I was a photojournalist, I worked with a lot of NGOs. So I went to developing countries. I've gone to the Middle East, a lot of places in Central America, and then I did my last photo exhibition with the United Nations, and I was in China. So I was traveling quite a lot for a few years, and it's pretty interesting what you find for yourself with your own eyes, and when you talk to people, how the other half of the world lives. So it was very, very, very eye opening for me, even though I came from also a developing country, but also having that connection with so many different people was amazing.
So, having spent time in those places, and I'm talking about the developing nations, and then going back to the commercialism of the United States and New York City in particular, how does that, I guess, impact you in a way? Do you feel emotionally connected to one side or the other?
I think that in order to live and work in those types of environment, you have to appreciate both. I
Mm.
don't like to be like, no, Americans, you're just wasting this and that. It's like I don't do that at all, because we shouldn't be really telling people how to live their life. I mean, we're lucky to have the lives that we have. So, I mean, that's good. That's not something that's bad. If anything, embrace it. And the people that are in developing countries, a lot of people would be surprised, but they are really happy for the most part with their life, and in a lot of ways, sometimes more happier than people that are living in big metropolitan areas, because it's very, very simple, And I grew up that way. We just had rice and eggs and chicken, and people were happy. It's not all about commercialism, but there's also nothing wrong with enjoying the finer things in life. So whatever makes you happy, as long as you're not hurting yourself and other people, and you try the best that you can to also give back, I think that's the way to live.
Yeah, that's a nice balanced response. And I guess I'd like to pick up on the point about you talking about working with NGOs and going to those developing countries. And I'm sure you would have seen a lot of things that were familiar to you in terms of your upbringing in the Philippines. But what's your view on these NGOs that do go into these developing nations and try and turn them into Western societies? What's your view on that?
That's actually why I left, because I was seeing a lot of things that I did not agree with. And I think the last one that I was working with, I don't even know their name and I don't even care to share. But I see a lot of people from, first world countries, as they call them, like the United States and parts of Europe, that would go there, put something up, and then they're saving people. Meanwhile, most of the money are actually going into the organization and not the people.
Mm,
And I've seen that firsthand, so this is not just hearsay, by the way. Because I've
mm,
gone to
mm.
their mansions where they were living. Meanwhile, the people that they were supposedly helping were living in shacks. So I
Yep.
definitely don't agree with that. And I tell people this all the time. If you want to work with NGOs, make sure that you are doing a lot of research before you give your money, because there are a lot of them out there that are really taking advantage of certain situations. It's not really helping the people that you need to be helping. And I know so many of you out there listening have really big hearts. So just make sure that it is going to the right place.
Yeah, really good point. And I wanted to dig a little bit deeper with you on that point, because on the show I've had a number of guests who come on and talk about volunteerism and going around the world traveling to do good in inverted brackets. And we actually had a panel discussion once on my show with a number of guests, and we talked for well over an hour and a half about this particular subject, because it's a divisive subject as well, because people think that they are doing good, and in a lot of cases they can be, but there's also a lot of things out there. And as somebody myself who's run my own international not-for-profit organisation for a number of years, I'm very aware of what's going on in a lot of these developing nations. So thank you for sharing your personal experience with that. I'm also interested to know, other than when you left the Philippines, I think you were aged 8, is that right, when you
Yes.
left?
Yes.
How was that first travel experience for you? I'm really interested to know how wide your eyes were open back then and to what was going on around you. Do you remember the day you flew out?
Yeah, I remember the day. I mean, it was a pretty crazy time. It was a little scary, and a lot of immigrants from different places will probably have a similar story as I do. When I was little, I didn't really know my mom because she was here in the United States, and obviously she was really working hard to support us back home. And my
Mm.
dad was the only one that was taking care of me. So, really, the thing that was a huge I guess you could say adjustment for me was really learning that other parent, because I didn't really know my mom, and really adjusting to having two parents now to listen to instead of one. And obviously going to a country that you didn't know the language, getting to know people here, the food is different, the environment and the weather is different. So it's pretty crazy when you first come here, but I was pretty fortunate because I was still very young. So I can't even imagine for adults who do this, and it's a little harder for you to adjust.
Yeah, isn't it amazing all the different reasons behind why people travel? You
Yeah.
know, there you were as a young girl traveling to the other side of the world, starting a whole new life, and you're on a plane full of people who no one knew your story. You know, you were sitting there and nervous and scared and excited all at the same time. You know what? I'd love to one day go down the aisle of an aircraft before it takes off with my microphone and ask everybody why they're traveling today.
I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of pretty interesting stories, because I think, in the United States, we're pretty lucky because whenever we travel, it's for leisure and for tourism. But in a lot of different countries, it's not. It's really to go to another place to get a better life, to immigrate, and all of that. So I'm sure you will. That would be very interesting, Mark.
It will be. Stay tuned, folks. You might hear me from a 737 one day at 35,000 feet interviewing people on their journey across the world. So in terms of when you arrived in the United States, there was obviously a huge adjustment time for you. How was it from a schooling perspective and getting in with American children?
It was definitely an adjustment, and it's funny that I learned a lot of English from television. So thank you to PBS, our public service television, for that,
Yeah,
and a lot
yeah.
of talk shows that I was, looking at and listening to, and I was learning a lot of different words. Some of them my parents probably didn't want me to learn, but that's that's one of the ways I really increased my vocabulary in English. And then when I started going to school, it was very intimidating because
Mm.
people were speaking very fast in English, and I had to make sure that I was keeping up. So
Did many of the other kids even know where the Philippines were?
I don't think at that age they really cared, honestly.
Yeah, 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 right. So it was just one of those things that, it was an evolution, right? It was an evolution of your own journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was fortunate enough, I think, I hear a lot of stories from other immigrants with bullying, and I was in a place, I guess, that I was very fortunate. I really didn't get that. And, my teachers were really great. So I was very fortunate to have a pretty decent environment for that.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, you've also been an art teacher. Tell us about that journey.
Yeah, oh my goodness. So I've had so many different jobs, Mark,
That's
before
great.
I
That's great.
landed here. This is why I know this is the right thing for me. So when I was in high school, well, all through my life, I was very much into the arts, but I knew from an immigrant family that being an artist was not something that was looked at as something stable and you can make money in. And when I went to college, I was obviously very hard headed, and I wanted to go into the arts, and my parents didn't want me to do that. They wanted me to be a nurse because, most Filipinos are nurses. That's what their parents aspire them to be.
Mm, mm, mm.
So, I went to school and I really wanted to do something in the arts. My parents didn't want to do it. So, in order for us to have some sort of a balance, I became a teacher, but in the arts.
Right,
So,
right.
I became an art teacher, and I did that for a very long, probably 3 to 4 years. And I
Oh,
headed up an art program in Chelsea in New York City. I was an art teacher in the South of Bronx. So I've done it all, worked in the public and private sector, teaching very wealthy children and very low income students. So I've seen the different sides of it all in New York City.
fantastic. And did you have any Picassos come through your art classes? Did you see anybody that had that kind of talent?
Of course, every kid is talented.
every Okay,
Maybe,
we can get
maybe
off
not.
the balance box. We can get off the balance box now.
Yeah,
You can tell us the truth.
maybe not in the arts, but talented in the arts of something.
They've probably all gone on to be podcasters, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a good switch back into the podcasting world, because now today you're helping people start podcasts and you've got some great stuff online to do that. Can you tell us what are the main things you've learned about podcasting over the last 3 years?
I've really learned, in not just in podcasting, but in anything that you do, is the main thing is just to start. I feel like we always have to be perfect and it has to be aligned with everything, and it's really stopping us from making an impact with our life and really going forward. So if you're thinking about podcasting, not it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, Mark, you listened to my first episode. My audio was not good. I didn't know what on earth I was doing, but I did that for a really long time. I didn't have an editor. I was editing it myself. It took me like 10 hours to edit a 45-minute show.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of learning to it, and I think you have to understand that everything that you want to get good at, if it's podcasting or something else, you just have to start doing it and start learning as you go. And that's how you get better. And the more you fail, the more better you become, actually. So as long as you fail forward, you're good to go.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I think we're unfortunately living in times where people think they can pick up a video camera and be a successful YouTuber overnight. They think they can pick up a microphone and be a successful podcaster overnight. But there's one thing I want to add to that, is that most people do things for a different reason. And I think we've all got to understand that when we decide to be a podcaster or a YouTuber or a digital nomad, we're doing it for reasons that are pretty selfish to ourselves. And that's fine. That's the way it should be. We should be following our own dreams, right? So I'm really interested to know, you've done 152 episodes now, and hats off to you, because I kind of look at podcasters and check out their sites and go, okay, if they've done over 100 episodes, they're committed. They're into this. They're in it for the right reasons. And that's just kind of some personal benchmark I've set, myself for looking at other people's podcast shows. So how have you evolved as a podcaster over those 3 years, do you think?
I think honestly, it's just trying to take the ego out of it. And I think in the beginning, you're like, oh my God, am I as good as I possibly can? Are my downloads big enough for this? And then you start really comparing yourself to other people. And as I started growing, I realized that none of that really mattered as
Mm.
long as I was able to really be true to who I wanted to share with my audience. And that's just going to resonate to them. It doesn't really matter if you have a few hundred downloads or hundreds of thousands of downloads. If you're doing what you're doing, then that's really what matters. And I think it's always constantly learning and constantly being a student that has really helped me grow and made me really create a sustainable career from this, and not just a hobby that's really been formative to my journey.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people listening today will be going, okay, I want to know more about that. How do I monetize something? So what are your tips around taking something like a podcast and monetizing it? What are the first steps in that journey?
One of the questions I get most asked of it's this question, right? How do I make money from podcasting? Because a lot of people don't know how to do it. Even people who have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of downloads, believe me, I've spoken to a few of those people, and they're still afraid. And I think a lot of that is feeling like imposter syndrome. Am I too small still? I don't know. And I tell the people that I've had as students, as mentors, even people who come up to me, is like, it doesn't matter how big or small you are, just start pitching or start doing what it is that you want to do. And it was funny because I did this virtual course with a few people the other day, and one of the students had asked me that, and she was so afraid, and she just started I think a year ago, and she thought her downloads were too low. And I told her, I was like, don't do that to yourself, because you're your worst enemy. I told her to just start pitching, and I told her exactly what she needed to do, and she just emailed me today and was like, oh my god, this is the she emailed me and said, oh my god, this is the first time I've ever landed a sponsorship. I did exactly what you told me to do. And she was like, oh my god, what do I do now? And I was like, see what happens when you actually just go for what you want and ask for what you want. It happens, you know. So none of this stuff, it's like we think it's some sort of magic. It's not, you know. It's just asking for what you want. People will give it to you.
Yeah, it's amazing, and that's really good advice. And I think it's advice applicable to your life in general. Self-belief. If you believe that you can do something, chances are you can do it, and you will do it. And if you put enough passion behind it, you can. And making money is the same thing. If you believe that you can make money, and if you believe what you've got is good and that people are going to value it, then put a money denomination value on it, because people will pay you for it. And that's all it's about. So I'm glad in some of the things that you said, because I'm the same in my podcast journey. I started off I remember the first couple of months, I was so focused on the number of downloads, where I was in the chart rankings, and I was having sleepless nights over that stuff, because I was thinking, hang on, I'm not going to be successful at this. It's going nowhere, you know. And then I thought, I literally woke up one day and said, you know what? I just love doing this for the sake of doing it. And if I've got one person listening to my show, I'm going to be happy. And I have every day. It's my dog. He listens to me every day. And since that time, it's like the weight of the world's gone off my shoulders, and everything else has come in, because the universe provides, of course, right? So I'm really happy that you said that, because it doesn't matter if you haven't got 10,000 downloads and all the rest of it, because there's going to be somebody out there listening who thinks, right, I can dial into this. This is an opportunity to do something together. And as a result of that, you end up with all sorts of amazing collaborations as well. So where do you see, and this is one that I throw at a lot of people I talk to on the show that are doing businesses like yours, where do you see your business platform as you have it today in 5 years from now?
Absolutely. So I see a lot of changes happening, and I think we're starting to do that right now. You know, COVID is happening, so it gives me more time to actually plan for the future. So I'm lucky enough that I am able to hire some assistants to be able to help me out, and it really gives me the time to focus on making changes with my business. So, as of right now, about 70% of my income is coming from brand sponsorships, and we want to be able to shift that now to a lot of helpful resources for our audience and people who want to start podcasting. So,
Mm.
we started the new website, howtocreateapodcast.com, and we've been able to help people. I've been doing courses with other companies, and I really want to be able to show to people that you can really create income from this and how to do it the right way. So that's really where we've been shifting, and really giving people so much more resources that they need that can really help them grow their business. And a lot of the things that we share on our site and our ebooks and all of the digital products that we have, is it could also go towards not just podcasting, but like you said, Mark, a lot of these things really go into any type of business, and so many things that you can use in one business will go along with your next business. That's why you see a lot of people who are successful in one become successful in the next. So that's really where we're going forward with our company, is just growing this. We started How to Create a Podcast, so we're trying to really build that up to really help people make this into a sustainable business and income as well.
I love that you're keeping true to your teaching roots as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that I do want to emphasize, the reason why I just started How to Create a Podcast right now, the last few months, and it has been gaining pretty, great traction, is because I did not start this until I knew I was talking about something I was an expert in. I really hate when people out there are teaching something and they have no idea what on earth that's
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
teaching. I hate talking to business coaches that have never started a business and they're telling people how to run a business. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to be that type of person. And, I know this is what has worked for me and for a lot of different podcasters. So that's why I wanted to put this out there.
Wonderful. Now, for everyone listening, yes, I am going to include all the links to Debbie's sites on here so you can check them out and connect with her and learn how to do a podcast, because she'll teach you the right way to do it. Now, thank you for sharing where your business is going. I'm also interested to know from you where you think the digital nomad space is going to be in for about 10 years from now. Where do you think that digital nomad space is heading?
I think this is going to be the new norm for a lot of people. I think this whole COVID thing is just going to get more businesses to be like, listen, we're paying so much money in our offices and our employees can work from home and it's saving us money. Employees are going to be like, listen, I love working from home. Can I do this? Can I do this from home? So I think this is going to be the new norm in the next few years, or even, well, now it actually is the new norm. So it's just going to keep going even after everyone is out of their homes.
So what about in terms of your own personal travel goals in the next few years? Are there places on your bucket list that you haven't got to yet that you really want to get to?
Honestly, my fiance and I have been talking, and especially with me, I really want to live somewhere for about 3 to 6 months out of the year. We still love New York City. That's where our families and our friends are. So we definitely want to live there and continue to live there. But we also want to change location every 3 to 6 months every single year. So in the next few years, that's probably what we're going to be doing. So it could be different places, or if we find somewhere that's really beautiful and interesting to us, we may go there. And the first place I think we're really wanting to do, well, I'm talking about me, is Italy, because I really love the food and the culture and people there. So I think that's going to be one of the first places that we're going to be visiting and staying for a long period of time.
Yeah, wonderful. Do you get back to the Philippines much?
Yes. Well, not a lot. I think I was there the last 4 years ago, for a month. So it's a really crazy thing, because whenever I usually go to the Philippines, it's just to visit family and friends, and we just stay in Ross City, where my family is from. But now that all of my family is kind of scattered everywhere, the first time that I actually became a tourist in my own country was 4 years ago, and I left Ross City. And it was mind blowing, because so many of my friends have gone there and they're like, have you gone here? And I'm like, nope, I've never gone anywhere except for that tiny little town.
Wow. Wow. That's extraordinary, isn't it, when you go back to your own country and have that experience?
Yeah, you become a tourist and your eyes are open. I'm like, I didn't realize how beautiful the Philippines was until I actually saw it.
Okay, I've got a couple of offbeat questions to finish the show with you today. The first one is, what's your favorite snack food when you're traveling?
My favorite snack food. Oh my goodness, there's so many. Okay, I love like fruit bars. I love dried fruits. I love dried mangoes. it's the
Right.
it's the Filipino in me. I love mangoes. And yeah, nuts. I love that too. So because you can really bring it anywhere. It's like trail mix. Those are good.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, what about window or aisle seat on a plane?
I used to be a window, and now I'm an aisle seat because it's easier for me to get in and out more quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Good decision. Good decision. And my last question, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing in life?
Oh my goodness, that's really hard because I'm doing what I really love to do. And so what I'm doing now, I'm not just podcasting, I'm also like writing and photographing. So everything that I would want to do is okay, so if I had no choice, it would probably be a nurse, because then I would have followed what my parents wanted me to be. Because I'm doing everything that I actually want. I'm a photographer, a writer, I'm a podcaster. So I'm like, yeah, it would be something I didn't want. It would be a nurse, which is not so bad right now because at least you're helping people. But yeah.
I like the way you say, if I really had to, I'd be a nurse.
Yeah.
That's cool. Listen, Debbie, it's been wonderful having you on my show today. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been a great chat, and I hope we can get together again and have another chat because I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me here. I had such a great time.
There we are. That was wonderful Debbie chatting to me today, all the way from Florida in the United States, and the Offbeat Life. Yes, that's her thing. Check out the links in the show notes, and you can check out all the wonderful things that Debbie's doing across the world with people on her show, but also great advice for people out there who want to start off a podcast show. She's certainly somebody that knows what they are talking about. Okay, well, if you're looking for more episodes from the Global Travel Channel podcast show, all you've got to do is head on over to the website, www.globaltravelchannel.com. You'll find all of the previous episodes there. If you do like the content on the show, please tell someone about it, because that's how we grow. Word of mouth is letting people know that this channel even exists, that there's this Kiwi guy on a sailboat that talks to people all over the world about their travel experiences, and they're very interesting guests as well. There we go. That's all you have to do. That's my pitch. There you go. I hope it works. So until we meet next time on the next Global Travel Channel podcast show, I hope all the people that are here for the first time return and listen to all the episodes that I've got coming up. There's some exciting stuff in the pipeline, and I can't wait to come back and do another show with you all. So until then, my name's Mark Philpott, and I wish you all a very safe and happy week ahead.